Welcome to the Microsoft Partner Network podcast. Every week, we bring in industry leaders and Microsoft partners to talk about the big ideas shaping business and technology today. In today's episode, we're talking with Rodney Clark, Vice President of Worldwide IoT Device Experience, about the latest trends in the world of IoT and how partners can better prepare for doing business in a more connected world. Welcome, Rodney. Very happy to have you in the studio today.
So great to be here.
You've been at Microsoft some time. I think we're looking at about 19 plus years or so. You've made your rounds in all sorts of areas of the company. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. What an incredible journey it's been over 19 years, and so fortunate to be at Microsoft and so fortunate to be in this space of IoT. I've had several roles within the company. Won't go through all of them because we don't have that much time, but I've taken a tour of duty through the company. And roughly 3.5, 4 years ago, saw an opportunity and really a need in the industry around shaping the Internet of Things. The business is built on our traditional Windows embedded business, and it's been so fun and so great to work with our partner ecosystem in evolving this notion of device to cloud.
That's awesome. So what are some trends that you're seeing in IoT right now?
Yeah, IoT is interesting. Like when I think about trends, I always try and personalize it. Back to what I do at Microsoft and kind of what drives me. One of the trends is just from a personal perspective, there's more and more data and information available. And to a gadget geek who centers around device and the experiences that devices create, the data and the information I personalize. Things like, my cycling experience every weekend. I have more information coming from computers and sensors and things from my bike. I can go and in my own personal cloud, really understand how I performed that day relative to my last ride or relative to my friends who may be on the same route. That's a trend from a consumer standpoint. The fact that we have these devices that are just common sense that we now can extract data and information from. From an industry perspective, there are so many trends shaping IoT, from things like cashless pay or digital pay, and the fact that in some countries, paying in cashless transaction is actually more popular than withdrawing money from an ATM. Branch transformation connected to that is another trend. Financial services companies finding different ways to manage all aspects of financial for their consumers. Connected cars, right? We hear about connected cars and autonomous cars and this notion of autonomous cars generating over 100 gigabytes of data per second. That's a massive trend in IoT. Wearables. I talked about my own experience in devices, but wearables and the impact that they have on things like healthcare, the impact that technology and the trends in technology play in farming and agriculture. So when we talk about IoT and the trends, there are so many that are personal and unique to home. There are so many that are personal and unique to businesses. And it creates this incredible opportunity to work with a partner ecosystem around harnessing, the collective to address these opportunities.
Yeah, because it seems like with IoT, you can't really do it yourself, right? I mean, there's too many pieces of the puzzle.
There really is. And as we think about that, this notion of IoT is really a value chain.
Yeah. It
starts from device. By the way, device is my jump-in point. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. But this value chain, starts a device. It goes to, the application. It goes all the way to the data and analytic platform. And really, and I think about it, and I like to tease it out from, how do customers get started? And differentiate that from how do partners get started. Sometimes it's the same jump-in point, but when you think about, the customer, it's really a company trying to solve a problem, right? How do I drive better efficiency? How do I leverage the assets that we have to make us smarter, to help us monetize in ways that we haven't before? There are, examples like farming that I mentioned and sensors to help farmers understand where to actually plant crops. If that's their position of strength, they have to yield more crops than anybody, then IoT potentially in the data that they leverage is a great starting point for that. Medical manufacturing companies, right, who for years have provided chemical combinations to produce medicines. And when they mix those, they have to be concerned about waste. A starting point for a customer in the medical field, in this case, manufacturing of medications, could be, hey, they want to eliminate waste, which translates into one more pill or one more vial of medicine so that they can save another life. And so the starting point is really unique to each and every customer, but really around what are they trying to drive or what problem are they trying to solve.
And what about for the partner? What's their kind of perspective in all of this? Yeah,
many of our partners are also enterprises. And so for many, the jump-in point is very similar to that of customers.
Right.
The partners have a unique opportunity because they can get started, but they also have a set of assets that are software platforms that enterprises use and leverage. Combinations of software platforms and hardware and things that they can put and opt together as solutions in terms of where they get started. Hey, if you're in agriculture, you're not going to want to go and get started in financial services. And so, chances are you should actually look at, how do I create these repeatable platforms based on the assets that I already have? And, I think about, there's several examples that come to mind. We had a OEM who builds weighing machines for food and meat slicers.
Yeah.
For years, they were building these devices, selling them to small butchers and small restaurants. They had a Win32 application that was in essence guidance on food safety. How long to keep meats out before they go bad. What temperature your butter should be at as you're mixing things. Well,
always been curious about that.
By the way, so have I. And oddly enough, this company was curious enough about it to develop a software platform around it. And so where they used to sell, meat slicers and scales to measure and weigh meat, today they're actually food safety as a service. And so that was their starting point. And many of our partners have, similar opportunities if they dig deep and really understand how they can create these repeatable solutions.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Do you know what the temperatures are?
I do, but you know what? They are different for each meat.
Oh, good. Good to know.
But the butter thing, we're gonna figure that one out together.
Okay, perfect. So we had Tom O'Reilly in the studio several weeks ago.
Yes.
So your team is focusing on really building out solutions based on the device. Can you tell me a little bit more about securing the intelligent edge?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about the device, and it is my lead-in because I work with primarily a set of device manufacturers who also happen to build additional capability, which could be software platforms or software as a service extensions. The device itself is the foundation of IoT. It is the thing in the Internet of Things.
Right.
Oftentimes, when we take IoT from a company perspective, we forget that even in an IoT scenario, in a large company perspective, there's a process whereby in order to extract the most optimum data sets and information, you actually have to touch and provision each and every one of the devices that's already in that environment. And so even an IoT implementation where you come at it from an IT perspective or a line of business problem and solving there, you still have to touch the device. When I think about the device, and I mentioned a point of sale reference and an ATM and a financial service reference earlier, there is a need for us to really focus on secure connectivity. And the industry in general, underestimates the needs to provide the highest level of security in connected scenarios. This spans from, a child's toy all the way to the most robust manufacturing scenario. That device and the role that it plays in the IoT value chain is critical. Having a secure endpoint is also extremely critical in that. And so I try and advise our partners that is the starting point. And we should have a conversation around the steps they're taking to ensure the security of that device.
What are some steps that you can take to secure the intelligent edge?
Yeah. So in the process of really looking through a secure scenario, very few companies address it. I talk about how important it is, but very few companies address it. When we think about this notion of as a service model, we have to have an answer. And this is a plea to the partner community as well as a call to action.
Yeah.
To that end, because there's not a lot of focus on it, Microsoft has published what we call the 7 properties of a highly secure and connected device. It's not quite like the 7 habits of highly effective people, but it's just as significant. Yes. In my world of IoT, that's my Stephen Covey, right? It's like, all right, it's like the 7 properties of a highly secure and connected device. And I'll walk through them really briefly. And then maybe we talk about like other aspects of security.
Yeah.
I'll let you ask the questions. I'm just going to give some responses and answers. But no, I mean, it starts with this notion of a hardware-based root of trust. And that's really around, does the device have unique and unforgeable identity that's inseparable from the hardware? Now, there's a lot to unpack there. People who build devices and who build as-a-service solutions will understand the importance of that hardware-based root of trust. There's also this small trusted computer base. And in most of the devices, this is software outside of the device's trusted computer base. And that's important as well. Defense in depth. And this is really, is the device protected if the security of one layer of the software is compromised? And how deep is the level of security? There's compartmentalization. If one component fails, is it specific to that particular segment of the hardware, and are the other aspects of the hardware protected? It's certificate-based authenticity, which we do, and that's a big part of the Windows experience today. It's renewable security, and it's also failure reporting. And so if you think about, again, the edge and how important it is in the overall IoT value chain and implementation, these are things that partners should look at and say and ask first, do we have elements of these 7 things? And then our P2P relationships, to what extent are we partnering with people who also place value in security, and specifically from a hardware perspective, these 7 trusted things.
Those are fantastic.
Yeah.
I hope y'all are listening. If you
I
do those
too.
7,
hello. Is anyone there? Hello.
So this is kind of a perfect time that we're coming to this podcast with some of the crazy security issues and threats with WannaCrypt that happened, that impacted the entire world and are still impacting. How should partners manage situations like this? Because this is not going to stop.
It's not going to stop. And, WannaCrypt is unfortunate, but it is an example of a ransomware attack. And it's a reminder of many things. And in fact, I should point out that Brad Smith wrote a very thorough response on his blog, which detailed, Microsoft's position. And more importantly, he also called for government to publish vulnerabilities for the sake of public good. And I think that's awesome. And so, anyone listening to this should go out and check our blog site and really look for Brad's remarks there. But what WannaCrypt proved is that a breach is inevitable. It's not a matter of if, but when. And in all situations, and in IoT specifically, customers and partners need to make sure that they have a comprehensive solution that addresses breaches at all levels, not just the device, but at all levels. And so there's kind of 4 things that I think about with respect to this. Is there a secure operating system? Again, we're talking IoT from end to end. Is there this notion of a secure operating system that is constantly updating? Leveraging tools like advanced threat protection in Windows is just a really good way to keep these devices updated. Is there a way to provision the devices that are already inside of IT environments so that they are also secure? That can come in the form of updates, through that secure operating system, or through some IT protocol which goes and provisions those devices to make them more secure. The third one is that, is there the right cloud security tools that can scan across all devices? And this is regardless of the operating system. This is Linux. This is Windows, and this is leveraging services like Azure that can go out and provide the necessary security tools to ensure that we scan all those devices and that all of them are updated. And then last is really connected to the third one, which is a robust and secure device management solution that's updating these devices on a regular basis, either directly as a function of the operating system or some other cloud service. The net is that all partners should be incorporating all aspects of security as they look at building IoT solutions. It's really, once you get beyond solving business needs for the customer, security is usually, the number one objection that comes up. Hey, I'm trusting Microsoft or whomever it may be to protect and this data and information in the cloud. This is now an asset to the company because it's helping them drive more efficient operations. We need to think about this and help our ecosystem think about this from device all the way through to cloud.
Yeah, I mean, you just made me think about GDPR as just an example of the kinds of some mechanism that governments are trying to control what's going on. That's the what is the data regulation policy?
Yes.
In the EU that will take effect in May of 2018.
Yes.
We have a lot of information about that, partners, but security is no joke, and at some point will be affecting revenues.
Yeah, it will. And it affects revenues on both sides, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you start thinking about a breach and dollars lost, efficiency lost, productivity lost. And then you start thinking about it as a differentiator.
Right.
In your solutions that you're building.
Yeah.
And the amount of money that's worth to a company who values a secure and connected solution. And so as we think about, again, end-to-end IoT, and I think about this where I started, which is the device to, the app dev platform to the analytics and these high value workloads, having a common thread of security all the way through is key. By the way, no partner will do this alone. This is where it takes not only in the spirit of security, but it takes tens, if not 20s of partners to work together across this IoT value chain to land a comprehensive, implementation, deployment, consumption, whatever the metric is for your organization in an enterprise. And so, the one thing I'd encourage partners to do beyond what we've already talked about, again, is to reach out to those partners who also place high value in secure connectivity and secure platform and software as a service development.
If you had one final message, what partners can do today? I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but what would you say tomorrow if they got to go start doing something?
Yeah, I mean, this is an exciting space. The numbers are huge and massive. The billions of devices, the trillions of dollars available, it's all real. And it sometimes gets in the way of some basics. The thing about IoT is it's long lead. And as much as we hate to admit it, this notion of pilots and POCs is real in this space. You have to prove to an organization that you're going to help them, drive efficiencies, shift and change business models, make more money. And the partners have to be invested in that. And these can be 12 to 18 month, sometimes 24-month cycles before we start seeing, true revenue flow from these. And so, in parting words, it's like, hang in there, partners. There are no shortcuts.
Yeah. You
have to get in and you have to win that first POC. You have to engage in that first pilot. Then, and here's the piece, what you want to do is build repeatable solutions. And so that every time you go and build a solution which is highly customized for the next partner, you're leveraging 80% of your IP.
Yeah.
That financial services partner that I talked about that's in, ATMs and leverages this old, server-based solution that they've ported to cloud, and they're going and selling that to Wells Fargo, and they land Wells Fargo. When they build that cloud solution that actually manages, data and device telemetry from the ATMs, and they sell that to Wells Fargo, when they go and sell that to UBC, they want to be able to leverage 80% of that IP so that the next implementation only takes 9 months.
Right.
Right. And that's the key. IoT, massive opportunity, and partners who are building these repeatable, scalable solutions will win the day.
That's super helpful, Rodney. Thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Really, really appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and please rate and review if you like what you hear. Also, follow us at MS Partner on Twitter and Facebook. Tune in next week for more great insights from business leaders and innovators shaping the tech industry today.